If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Whether you're in a cozy corner of Texas or sipping coffee somewhere in Manila, your voice matters here. And if you felt even a flicker of emotion during this journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got another powerful story coming tomorrow, one that might just change how you see love, loss, and forgiveness. You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay kind and keep believing in second chances. It was a grey, misty afternoon in early November when Ethan Cole, a 58-year-old real estate magnate from Nashville, pulled his black Cadillac Escalade to a gentle stop just outside Willow Creek Cemetery. For the past 19 years, since the love of his life, Sarah, had passed away, he'd visited her grave every Thursday, rain or shine. The cemetery sat on a quiet hill, blanketed with amber leaves, and framed by rows of old oaks that whispered in the wind. For Ethan, it had become a sanctuary, a place where he could sit in silence and remember the woman who once brought light to every room. He stepped out of his SUV, zipped his navy wool coat, and opened a large black umbrella. The temperature hovered around 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air smelled of damp earth and fading autumn. As he made his way up the gravel path towards Sarah's resting place, something unusual caught his eye. Across the street, near an old diner called Gracie's Grill, a young woman sat hunched beneath a flickering neon sign. She clutched a bundled baby to her chest, her thin coat soaked through, her hair plastered to her cheeks by the drizzle. Ethan slowed his steps. The girl looked no older than her mid-20s. Her boots were worn, the baby wrapped in nothing more than a faded pink blanket. The scene pulled at something deep inside him, a quiet ache he hadn't felt in years. Without fully realizing why, Ethan turned and crossed the street. As he approached, the woman glanced up, startled. Her eyes were dark and tired, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle but firm. She hesitated, then gave a faint nod. "Just trying to stay dry until the rain lets up." Ethan looked down at the baby, whose face was barely visible beneath the frayed fabric. The child was fast asleep, unaware of the cold or the hunger that likely came with it. Ethan's chest tightened. "Have you had anything to eat?" he asked. She looked away, embarrassed. "Not since yesterday," she whispered. Ethan didn't hesitate. He reached into his wallet and pulled out 3 crisp $100 bills, folded them in half, and held them out. "Get something hot to eat, some dry clothes for the baby, please." The woman blinked, as if unsure whether she was dreaming. Slowly, her trembling hands reached for the cash. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the patter of rain. Ethan offered a soft smile. "What's your name?" "Madison," she replied. "Madison Carter." "Nice to meet you, Madison," Ethan said, then paused. "I'm Ethan." They held each other's gaze for a moment longer, two strangers connected by something neither of them could explain. Then Ethan turned and walked back across the street, the umbrella trembling in his hand. What he didn't know was that this brief encounter would soon unravel everything he thought he knew about Sarah, about himself, and about the family he never knew he had. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. No matter how many times he fluffed the pillows or adjusted the thermostat, his mind kept circling back to the young woman beneath the neon sign, Madison Carter. Her hollow eyes, the way she clutched that baby like the world might take him away. Something about her stirred a strange unease in his chest. It wasn't just sympathy, it was recognition, like he'd seen those eyes before, long ago, in someone else. The next day, despite the cold, Ethan returned to Willow Creek Cemetery, just like he always did. The ground was still damp from the night's frost, and fallen leaves clung to the soles of his shoes. As he reached Sarah's grave, marble headstone soft with moss, his breath caught. Someone was already there. It was Madison. She was kneeling, the baby nestled in her lap, her head bowed as she whispered something to the grave. Sarah's grave. Ethan froze. His heart thudded against his ribs like it was trying to get out. Why was she here? How could she possibly know this place? He took a cautious step forward. The gravel crunched beneath his feet, and Madison looked up. Her eyes widened in shock, but she didn't run. She didn't hide. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said quickly, her voice shaking. I needed to come." Ethan's voice was harder now, laced with confusion. "How do you know my wife?" Madison swallowed. She glanced down at her baby, then back at him. Her lips quivered, and then she said something that cracked the world wide open. "She was my mother," Madison whispered. Sarah Cole. "I was adopted as a baby. I only found out a few weeks ago." Ethan stumbled back. "No," he muttered. "That's not possible. Sarah and we never had children. She would have told me." "I didn't know either," Madison said, standing slowly. "Not until I found a letter in an old box at my adoptive parents' house. It had her name, Sarah Michelle Donovan. That was her maiden name, wasn't it?" Ethan's stomach dropped. "It was." He stared at Madison, eyes scanning her face, her features, trying to find Sarah in her. And suddenly, he did. In the curve of her nose, in the way she blinked too fast, when she got emotional. It was like seeing a ghost. Only this ghost was holding a baby and standing in the rain. "I don't want anything from you," Madison said gently. "I'm not here for money or pity. I needed to know where I came from." Ethan looked down at the headstone. Beloved wife. Forever missed. And now, maybe, mother. Everything he thought he knew about Sarah, about their marriage, about their life, it was all unraveling, and standing in front of him was the piece she never told him about. Her daughter. His daughter. Ethan didn't say another word. He turned and walked away, heart pounding, hands trembling. The rain had started again, soft at first, then heavier, like the sky itself was grieving. He drove home in silence, the windshield wipers working overtime. But no matter how fast they moved, they couldn't clear the storm inside him. Could Madison really be telling the truth? Had Sarah, the woman he loved more than anything, carried a secret this big to her grave? That night, Ethan didn't touch his dinner. He sat in his dimly lit study, a glass of bourbon untouched on the table, the fireplace still cold and lifeless. His eyes wandered to the mantel, where Sarah's photo still stood in a silver frame. Her smile seemed different now, mysterious, distant, like she knew something he didn't, something she never told him. He couldn't let it go. He had to know, had to find proof, or peace, or both. Around midnight, he pulled down the attic ladder and climbed up into the cold, dusty air. Cobwebs clung to the corners. Boxes lined the space like forgotten memories, untouched for decades. He opened one after another. Old Christmas ornaments, high school yearbooks, faded wedding albums. And then, tucked beneath a worn baby quilt he didn't recognize, Ethan spotted a small floral-patterned suitcase. It was hers, Sarah's. He knew it the moment he touched the handle. With trembling fingers, he flipped the clasps and opened the case. Inside were notebooks tied with ribbon, a pair of ballet flats, and tucked between the pages of a journal was a sealed envelope with his name in her handwriting. Ethan. He sat back on the attic floor, knees to his chest, and slowly opened the letter. "If you're reading this, it means the truth has found you. I never wanted to lie. I was afraid. Before I met you, I was young, in love with someone who disappeared the moment I needed him most. I was pregnant and ashamed, and I gave our daughter up for adoption. Then, you came into my life. You saved me in ways I never knew I needed. I wanted to tell you, Ethan, so many times, but I was scared that you'd look at me differently, that it would change everything. So I buried it. But not a single day went by that I didn't think of her." If she ever finds you, please, don't turn her away. She is a part of me, and loving her will be like loving me all over again. With all my heart, Sarah." The words hit him like a freight train. Ethan pressed the letter to his chest and wept, silent, broken sobs that filled the attic with a sorrow no one else would ever hear. It was true, Madison wasn't lying. She was Sarah's daughter. And now, she was his only living connection to the woman he'd loved and lost. For the first time in 19 years, Ethan realized something. Sarah hadn't abandoned truth. She'd buried it in love, in fear, in silence. And now, it was Ethan's turn to dig it back up and decide what came next. The next morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, but Ethan didn't notice. The letter lay on the table, unfolded, edges worn from the night before. He must have read it a dozen times, every word etched into his memory like stone. He hadn't slept, hadn't even changed out of his wrinkled dress shirt from the day before. His mind was still spinning, but one thing had become clear. He had to see Madison again. He dialed the number she'd scribbled on a receipt when they'd last spoken. Just in case, she'd said. Her voice on the other end was soft, guarded. She thought he'd called to ask more questions. She didn't expect an invitation. "Would you come by the house?" he asked. "I found something that belongs to both of us." That afternoon, Madison stood on Ethan's porch, cradling little Noah in her arms. She looked nervous, unsure. But Ethan greeted her not with suspicion, not with questions, but with an open door. "Come in," he said gently. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he and Sarah once shared morning coffee and late-night talks. Now, across from him sat Sarah's daughter and a grandson he never knew he had. The baby squirmed in Madison's lap, chewing on his fingers, letting out the occasional coo. Ethan slid the letter across the table. "I think this is meant for both of us," he said. Madison opened it slowly, reading in silence, her eyes welling up as she reached the final lines. She looked up, voice cracking. "I always wondered if she thought about me, if she regretted it." "She didn't," Ethan said firmly. "She carried you with her every day. I just didn't see it." A long silence followed. Not the kind filled with awkward tension, but one heavy with truth and emotion. Then Noah let out a little squeal, grabbing a spoon off the table and banging it like a drum. Madison laughed for the first time, brushing tears from her cheeks. "Sorry, he's teething." Ethan smiled, something unfamiliar but welcome warming his chest. "He's got spirit, that's good." From that day forward, things began to shift. Madison didn't move in, but she visited often. At first, the conversations were cautious, like strangers navigating fragile ground. But slowly, the walls came down. Ethan dug an old rocking chair out of storage and fixed it up for the nursery. He bought a high chair, baby-proofed the kitchen, and started learning how to mix formula. He hadn't done any of this in his 58 years, but now it felt natural. Noah, who once stared at him with wide, curious eyes, soon began calling him Pop. Madison, too, began to soften, letting herself laugh, letting Ethan hold the baby while she made coffee. One evening, after reading Noah a bedtime story, Ethan sat back and looked around the room. There were toys on the floor, spaghetti stained, bibs drying on the counter, and tiny socks on the stairs. His home, once a shrine to loss, was finally full again. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Ethan Cole didn't feel haunted by the past. He felt hope. Weeks passed, and what began as fragile conversations slowly turned into a routine. Madison would bring little Noah by 2 or 3 times a week. Ethan started planning around their visits. He stocked the pantry with apple juice, learned how to make grilled cheese the way Noah liked it, even downloaded a bedtime story app on his phone. The silence that had once filled the house was now replaced with baby giggles and the hum of second chances. But even in the joy, something still weighed on Ethan's heart. There was one name he couldn't shake. The man Sarah had mentioned in her letter. The one who'd left her when she needed him most. The father Madison never knew. Ethan had always believed in answers, even when they hurt. So one evening, after Madison and Noah had left, he made a call to an old college buddy who worked in private records. A few days later, he had a name and an address. Brian Thompson, 61 years old, living just 90 miles east in a quiet retirement community near Knoxville. Ethan debated it for a few days. He didn't owe Brian anything, but Madison did. She deserved to know the truth, the full truth. So one Sunday morning, Ethan made the drive. The air was brisk, and the leaves had just started turning orange. When Brian opened the door, he blinked in shock. "Ethan Cole?" he said, furrowing his brows. "Man, it's been, 30 years?" "At least," Ethan said. "Can I come in? It's about Sarah." The name stopped Brian cold. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the living room. Over tea, Ethan told him everything. Sarah's passing, the letter, Madison, the baby. Brian sat motionless, stunned. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I had no idea she kept the baby. I thought she went through with the adoption and moved on. I was stupid. I ran. And now..." Ethan looked him in the eye. "She never told me either. But Madison's here now. She's real. She's looking for something, maybe not a father, but maybe a face that explains where she came from." Brian nodded, tears brimming. "If she's willing, I'd like to meet her." Back in Nashville, Madison hesitated. "I don't know if I can face him," she said, cradling Noah. "You don't have to," Ethan replied. "But if you want to, I'll be there with you." A week later, they met in a park near the river. It was sunny, the air full of the scent of fresh grass and cautious beginnings. Brian brought a small bouquet of wildflowers, clutched nervously in his calloused hands. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I'm sorry. And if you'll let me, I'd like to know you, both of you." Madison studied him for a long moment. Then she handed Noah the flowers. The baby squealed with delight. "I don't know what the future looks like," Madison said softly. "But maybe we can figure it out, together." Ethan watched them from a distance, heart full, eyes misty. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was real, raw, honest. And in that messy, beautiful moment, it was exactly enough. This story wasn't just about loss. It was about healing, forgiveness, and the quiet power of second chances. Now, we want to hear from you. What part of Ethan and Madison's journey moved you the most? Was it the moment Ethan found Sarah's letter in the attic? Or when Madison for the first time heard the words, "I'm your father," in a way that didn't come from anger, but from love? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from, whether it's a rainy night in Seattle, a quiet afternoon in Texas, or somewhere halfway across the world. We'd love to know how this story touched your heart. Have you ever reunited with someone from your past? Have you ever forgiven someone who didn't ask for it? Or maybe you're still waiting for a letter that never came. Whatever your story is, you're not alone here. And if you believe in the power of family, in unexpected beginnings, and in the kind of love that lives on, even after someone's gone, then drop A or type HOPE in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you forever.